Your call has been forwarded to an automatic voice message system. At the tone, please record your message. When you have finished recording, you may hang up or press 1 for more options.
Have you ever noticed anything strange about the universal voicemail message? Probably not. That's because it's spoken in American Standard English, the type of English I'm speaking to you right now. Standard English has been the norm in America since before its founding. But why? And how did a group of men in 18th century Europe lead to generations of language stigmatization? And why should we care?
1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2.
In the 17th century, England was full of chaos. Between various religious persecutions, tyrannical leadership, the plague, the Great Fire of London, and an obscene amount of wars, the people of England were tired. This led to a need for reform and stability. This presented itself in many ways, but was mainly characterized by the search for regulation and reason. This search made its way to linguistics. The thought at the time was that language had a divine origin, and that all existing languages were corrupt versions of the original language. Some languages were more corrupt than others, like English, which had shifted greatly over the years. This led to a desire to fix the English language and bring it closer to the divine original language. Insert Prescriptive Grammarians. They planned to fix English through a 3-step plan: to ascertain, to refine, and to fix. The goal of ascertainment was to establish a set of standard rules for English. Refinement was considered the purification of the language. This meant no contractions, no abbreviations, and no new words. Finally, prescriptivists aimed to fix the language, or to permanently freeze it and prevent any future change. Change meant corruption, and a corrupt language meant corrupt morals. If you've ever wondered where the rule "don't split infinitives" comes from, you have prescriptivists to thank, specifically Robert Lowth. In 1792, Lowth published a short introduction to grammar, in which he outlines the grammatical rules of English, as well as making up rules of his own, like the idea of not splitting infinitives and avoiding double negatives. All of these rules that were being introduced were rules that weren't intuitive, meaning they needed to be learned. Specifically, they needed to be learned at an academy. Not everyone could afford to go to an academy, leaving the rich to speak correctly and the poor to get left behind. Suddenly, we saw a shift in dialect that was more than just regional. There were rich, educated people speaking in a form of English that was deemed superior. If you couldn't afford an education, you didn't deserve to speak English the correct way. Educated individuals started to gatekeep the English language and developed a superiority complex over the type of English that they spoke. Move forward to 21st century America, and the story is essentially the same. There are countless dialects in America: AAVE, or African American Vernacular English, and Mountain Talk, or Appalachian dialect, to name a few.
So right here is like love. It's love. Like everybody got love over here, you know. Every now and then, you know, we got little disagreements with each other. You know what I'm saying? But it's always love. You know what I mean?
Call it skull. I don't know if you've heard that. I know you have. Call it a skull. Four land.
That's like a carburetor in my van, all gommed up with all that old dirty stuff.
Gum? Means like it's all cluttered up, gommed up.
Dialects are defined as a variety of language associated with a regionally or socially defined group. In other words, these subgroups of English all have characteristically different grammatical patterns, word choice, and sentence structure. Dialects can be seen as a unifying force for marginalized groups and providing a safe haven for individuals who stand on the intersections of various identities. And then there's Standard English, which is a dialect in itself. This dialect has been held higher than all other dialects. Those who speak other dialects often struggle in America because of it. In a study done on dialect bias and automatic speech recognition, Americans who spoke Appalachian dialect were less understood by automatic speech recognition technologies than their standard English-speaking counterparts. The idea of standard English being correct English is still pervasive in most discourse communities, specifically academia. Students who speak different dialects face stigmatization simply because of the way they talk, despite being perfectly fluent in English. Results from a survey on how dialects impact college students found that when asked to reflect on how language might influence their interactions with others on campus, participants suggested that dialect plays a role in the type of classmates to whom they are initially drawn, that influences how others perceive them, and, for the more vernacular students, it draws attention, sometimes positively and sometimes in the form of teasing. Some teachers are starting to factor the importance of dialects into their classrooms, as well as their testing standards. Rebecca Wheeler, Kelly Cartwright, and Rachel Swords outline this in their piece, Factoring AAVE into Reading Assessment and Instruction. They mention how teachers are using multicultural reading resources for their elementary students. They also cite that multiple forms of reading assessment, like the PALS, DRA, and WRMT, explicitly state that words mispronounced due to a speech problem or dialect may be coded, but are not counted as errors. Wheeler, Cartwright, and Swords go on to say that not all teachers understand the differences in dialect. They write, although the developers of these reading assessments clearly intended that dialect influence not count as reading error, teachers need guidance on identifying dialect influence. Assessment manuals do not explain what counts as dialect features or how dialect can affect decoding. Without specific guidelines and specific knowledge of their students' dialect patterns, including phonological, morphological, and syntactic features, teachers will be unable to factor dialect into reading assessment. While there have been strides made to lessen the discrimination that non-standard English speakers face, there is still work to be done. Children are getting left behind. In his essay, Unendangered Dialect, Endangered People, The Case of African American Vernacular English, William Labov discusses the implications of dialect stigmatization on young students and their educational experience. Labov writes, by the time they reach the 4th grade, most of our students are alienated from the reading process as they have known it and from the institution of education as a whole. Because the education system wasn't built for anyone except those who speak standard English, it still sees students who speak different dialects as other. While the teachers might not view their students as such, the standardized systems built on standard English certainly do. Language is a way for people to express themselves. Libby Green notes that we use language to construct ourselves as social beings, to signal who we are and who we are not, and cannot be. Language shapes us, and conversely, we shape language. Language is built by the people who speak it, and the rules that were made up by a group of 18th century grammarians can be just as easily disregarded. While generations of stigmatization might not be as easy to shake, it starts by realizing that standard English isn't the end-all be-all, and it shouldn't have to be.
Your call has been forwarded to an automatic voice message system. At the tone, please record your message. When you have finished recording, you may hang up or press 1 for more options.